Thanks a lot for joining us today as we get set for Duke and St. Louis. 12:05 is our tip-off time. Now, after all of our Duke basketball games, when you tune into our locker room report, we always feature our Duke Marine Lab Environmental Assist of the game, which is brought to us by the Nicholas School of the Environment. And right now, we're pleased to be joined by the Dean of Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment, Bill Chameides. Bill, thanks a lot for taking a few moments to spend with us up here in the Crow's Nest overlooking Coach K Court. Quite a nice view for the game, and I hope you're looking forward to watching the Blue Devils this afternoon.
Absolutely, John. It's great to be here. I've never been up at the Crow's Nest, and I want to figure out how I can get a ticket to this seat right here.
Absolutely. Well, now, Bill has led 2 fact-finding trips to the Louisiana coast this year to tour regions affected by the BP oil spill. And he's written about those trips in his popular science blog, The Green Grok, which he's been doing for the past 3 years, and which you can find at thegreengrok.com. Now, just a couple questions about that. Now, you wrote in there that you went to Louisiana expecting to find an environmental disaster, and you did, just not the one you were expecting to find. What did you mean by that? What did you find?
Sure, that's absolutely right. I went down there with some folks, and we were going to go look at the oil spill, and we saw some appalling things down there, and it's clearly a major problem. Not nearly as bad as we thought it would be earlier in the spill process, but not nearly as good as I think it's being portrayed in the media right now. But there was this epiphany moment. We were down there. We were in a place called Bay Jimmy where some of the worst oiling was, and we were looking at the oil and everything. And this fisherman who was with us, Rick, sort of offhand pointed out to this open water to our right, and he said, "You see all that water over there? That all used to be land." And it suddenly occurred to me that there really is an environmental catastrophe, and what it is something that's been going on for decades, and it's the loss of the wetlands in the Mississippi River Delta. That's been going on since the 20s and is potentially the greatest environmental disaster our country's facing.
Now, some of those areas are pretty remote and low-lying, and some people wonder why it's worth it trying to save some of that, but maybe you can tell us why that is worth the trouble.
Yeah, good question. So, first of all, bear in mind that these wetlands are an incredible environmental resource, economic resource. For example, they support the fisheries of the Gulf Coast, of the Gulf of Mexico. Multi-billion-dollar industry of fishing that probably supplies about 30% of all the domestic fish that we eat. You lose those wetlands, you lose those fisheries, you lose a multi-billion-dollar industry. They provide habitat for migratory birds. They provide infrastructure for the oil and gas industry. We're talking about a severe economic loss, not just an environmental loss, by losing those wetlands.
We're speaking with Bill Chameides, the Dean of Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment, and I heard as a result of your trips down there to the Gulf that Duke is launching some new programs where Duke students will go to Louisiana next summer and work with some of the locals to replant those wetlands and help communities that are being threatened by the land loss. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's being planned there?
Sure. So, what we want to do is we want to work with the communities down there. We saw some amazing groups of people who have, many of them Native Americans, who have been living in these bayous for hundreds of years, perhaps 1,000 years, who have held on to those lands and are now faced with perhaps losing them. And so we want to partner with them to help them try to save their lands, try to work with them in terms of economic opportunities for them, education, a whole wide variety of community involvements. That's really the trademark of Duke's Knowledge in the Service of Society, to help those people with their problems today and maybe what they're going to do in the future.
Now, a lot of these problems obviously came to light because of the BP oil spill and all the attention down there. Can the oil and gas industry be part of the sustainable future for that area, or should we stop drilling there altogether to protect the environment?
Well,
that's an opinion, I know.
That's a great question and a tough one. I think that we all need to recognize that our love affair or dependence upon oil and gas is not permanent. Eventually, we're going to have to figure out a different way to power our homes and power our vehicles and so forth. And the amount of oil and gas that we have in the Gulf is significant, but relative to the resources around the world is relatively small. So we need to make some calculations about it and decisions about how we're going to go from where we are today to a future where we're not dependent on oil and gas, and then decide how much of that future is going to be dependent upon oil and gas in the Gulf. But make sure that whatever decision we make is an informed decision, recognizing that if we lose the wetlands of the Gulf, we're talking about a loss of billions upon billions of dollars of services that we can't do without. So it's not such an easy equation, and it's not one that I think you can make a decision of without going through significant analysis. But if you go through that analysis and not take into account the environmental and economic value of those ecosystems in the wetlands, you're going to come up with the wrong decision.
Well, Bill, thanks a lot for shedding some insight on that. We appreciate your time here today and hope you enjoy the day watching Duke basketball here against St. Louis.
Absolutely. Thank you, John, and go Duke. Go
All
Blue
right.
Devils.
Thank you. Well, that's Bill Chameides. He's the Dean of the Duke Nicholas School of the Environment, joining us here on the Tip-Off Show. And we'll have more when we continue from Cameron right after this.